I hope you had a nice lunch. So before we start our next session, so there will be a panel session, but before that we have a keynote from Professor Sir Stephen Holgate. It's a great pleasure. It doesn't require introduction. Very prominent figure in the area of air quality and health, and doing a lot of work for the UKRI. So Professor Sir Stephen Holgate is a UKRI Clean Air Champion. He has over 1,000 research publications on asthma and air pollution. A former government advisor, he provided key medical evidence in the Ella Ado Kisi Debra inquest and was knighted for his medical research. I'm not sure if you're aware of that. So there was this first case in the world where the death of cause was written on the death certificate as air pollution. And Professor Sir Stephen Holgate has played a significant role in getting that the particular case recognized. So we have a great pleasure to invite you and listen to you. Please.
Well, thank you very much, Prashant, and thank you so much, all of you, for inviting me here to be in this wonderful part of England on a lovely, sunny, cool day at this brilliant university. So we're really, really pleased to be part of this. And I think some of the talks we've heard this morning just illustrate how important it is that we bring people together from across the different interdisciplinary divides to be able to deal with some of the complex issues that affect, in my case, my personal interest, which is human health. But I know environmental health is very much connected with that. So if I may begin, really, I've got 15 minutes just to try and explain a little bit why I'm standing here talking to you about health and air pollution. Because what we heard this morning from Ali is that the air pollution in the UK is dropping tremendously from a variety of known sources. And the big question might be, well, what the heck's going on here? Why all this fuss about human health and air pollution if actually the air pollution is being attacked and being driven down so effectively? And the second reason I'm here is because many of the factors that you've been talking about this morning intersect with the area that we're interested in, air quality. And a number of you have mentioned that in your presentations and the way that you can mitigate or adapt to air pollution by using green and blue infrastructure to help with that. So I was born in Manchester, and after the Second World War, I was born in 1947, and I remember walking round Manchester, around Old Trafford, where the cricket pitches are there, looking at this incredibly bombed city, and the architecture around that part of Manchester at that time was horrific, with many buildings destroyed. But what stood out then were these incredible cathedrals of industry. The cotton mills particularly were very obvious. My father was an auctioneer and valuer of machinery in cotton mills, and he used to take me around these places as part of a sort of nice Saturday afternoon trip. But anyway, it was absolutely incredible how much these places influence how our country has developed its urban environment. And that's why its opening slide really is to try and shine a light on those days. This is obviously 1952, when we had that terrible December smog, which many of you will be aware of, and the deaths that occurred in London during that terrible period. And of course, the cause of all of that was the burning of coal, not only by industry, as you can see on the top left, but by domestic burning of coal as well. And the other thing that's quite important at that time is that although 40-odd deaths were reported over a couple of days, 12,000 people died as a result of that single 5-day episode, if we look further down the line at what happened. Now, air pollution hasn't gone away. In this country, out of sight, out of mind. So you might think it has gone away, but it hasn't. But certainly if we go to other parts of the world, and all of you will be aware of this because it's been in the news recently, the terrible smogs that are occurring in India and Pakistan, which of course are a tragedy in many ways because they're all preventable, and the reasons for that, which is biomass burning, in this case during November of last year, the burning of the stubble in large part in the fields in and around the big cities, but also the biomass burning within the cities and the industry around that. And if you look at the satellite image there, that big grey smudgy image is the fog and smog that you can see around the mountains of India and Pakistan. So this is a tragedy that's still unfolding in front of our eyes. And I think as a world, that wants sustainability, this is a shocking, shocking thing to still be happening. And maybe what you've all been talking about today will make some inroads into that. The reason I'm really speaking today is that not that air pollution in the UK is shockingly awful, but the fact that science is wonderfully good. And what's happened in the last 2 decades is that the knowledge about how many human diseases are driven and made worse by air pollution has grown exponentially. This is a book that will be published in 2 months' time by Pope and Dockery, and I'd advise you to look at this. It's a wonderful book called Particles of Truth. And this is the history of how air pollution particles really came into the lexicon of air pollution research, and all the political shenanigans that try to squash it and all the other things that we all know happens when one is fighting environmental causes. But I wanted really to point out that air pollution on the far left there is as bad, if not worse now, than tobacco smoking as a cause of human death across the world. And if you look at it in comparison with cancer, all cancers were just below that. So the magnitude of this problem really does need to be made. And the science I just referred to, of which there's been an exponential increase in the last decade, means that every single organ of the human body is involved in air pollution damage. So this isn't just about lung disease, it's not just about heart disease, this is about everything, from cancer, brain disease, kidney disease, whatever. And it's also about the developing baby and what happens to the lungs and heart and brain of babies, of mothers born who have been exposed to air pollution, which I will return to in a few moments. And of course, the reason for this is that what we've understood is these little particles are able to cross from the lung, where they're taken in large part, across into the circulation and get embedded in all the organs. And in those organs, they act as a slow-release tablet, releasing their chemical toxicity on the cells that make up those organs. So it's not rocket science, but this is the situation we're now faced with. And I've just put this one slide up from Mark Miller, one of our colleagues in Edinburgh, who's very active in the cardiovascular area, to show that cardiovascular disease is still the #1 killer and also the #1 cause of morbidity from air pollution. And we get about 11,000 deaths brought forward each year in this country from cardiovascular disease. But it's not just heart attacks, it's everything. If you look at that list, there isn't a heart disease there that's not on it, apart from genetic heart diseases, from valve disease to strokes to whatever. So this is a very widespread problem, and this is a problem affecting all our organs. I'm a lung specialist, as you heard, and thank you, Prashant, for the introduction. COPD is a British disease, as it's often called, because largely of air pollution and tobacco smoking, and that just summarizes some of the sort of crude biology of the disease. It's very common, much commoner than people realize. And if we look at just one study, this is the Born in Bradford study. This is a wonderful study in Bradford, in Yorkshire, where they've got newborn children and pregnant mums to enroll and follow them over about 15 to 20 years to see what various factors influence the health of that population. And it's a very ethnically diverse population. And just on this one slide, it just makes the statement that one episode lasting 5 days in Bradford of air pollution in the winter lasted with health effects for 100 days and counted up to 30 to 50% of the morbidity and mortality of COPD over that period of time, whether hospital admissions or whether GP consultations. And also, if we look at all the high science, the metabolomics, for example, this is the wonderful biobank which we're all very familiar with. The Wellcome Trust and MRC put together 273,000 individuals from 500,000. And here they've got a fingerprint to show that air pollution in the UK, at the levels you were hearing about this morning, predisposed to the start of COPD, with tobacco smoke then making it worse. So this is this science which is really informing this new debate. And I did mention babies and children. This is a serious issue for people being born even today, in that these particles we're talking about, on entering the maternal circulation, program the placenta to secrete chemicals, and some of them even cross the placenta to end up in the fetus. And they reduce the dividing, branching of the lung by 2.5 generations. So normally we have 23 generations of airways in the lung. If you were born in a highly polluted area of the world, then you're missing 2.5 generations of airways as a direct result of the maternal switching off of the fetal branching morphogenesis in the developing child. And this is why air pollution, to me, is a passionate thing, because it's not so much my age now, because my life is getting to a close. It's the lives of people like Ella Kissy Deborah, shown in the bottom right there, who had 27 hospital admissions, 17 cardiovascular and respiratory attacks over a period of 2.5 years before she eventually died of a very severe asthma. And of course, this is absolute tragedy, and all of it's avoidable. And of course, those are the surface issues around a disease I'm passionate about. But shown in that middle block there is the fact that air pollution, amongst other environmental factors, like diet and so on, can program the fetus into a number of non-communicable diseases, like rheumatoid arthritis, multiple sclerosis, inflammatory bowel disease, all of which are increased as a direct result of this pre-programming before the child is born. So if we actually now start getting real about this, the question should be, what disease isn't influenced by air pollution? This is one study in Denmark, published only a few months ago, looking at over 3 million people in that population, showing nearly 700 diseases now have been linked to worsening or onset as a result of air pollution exposure. This isn't because the air pollution is getting worse. This is because diseases we didn't understand are now being attributed to this particular environmental cause. And that's why it's important we keep driving down the levels. And as we look at the graph versus, in this case, particles on the horizontal axis, PM 2.5, against the vertical axis of death and the relative risk of death, we can see as we start to get down to those lower levels, the line isn't linear any longer. It's superlinear. So down at the lower levels of air pollution, the proportional health effects become greater. So I'd like to end, really, by saying that connecting with green and blue spaces is part of all of this, which is absolutely brilliant, and we're very, very keen to work with you. At our air pollution conference in Birmingham in October, a picture of which is shown there, we had over 200 people present. And what was important about this is that a real community of interdisciplinary scientists has started to form, just as I've witnessed here today, listening to what you've all got to say. So what we'd like to do is to offer you a hand to maybe connect with us on air pollution as a major issue, and to use some of the technologies that you're working on and examples and some of the ways that you're working with society and industry, so that we can actually join hands in this exercise. And if you want to feel you would like to join this new Clean Air Alliance that we're trying to put together with our friends at the Institute for Environmental Sciences, then do please try and scan that. I wish you every luck, because I have a bit of a problem with scanning it sometimes. But if not, do please contact us. We'd love to have you involved in all of this as we go forward into the future. Thank you very much.